All righty. Well, we will go ahead and get started. My name is Miles Surratt. I am an Associate Vice President here in the Division of Student Affairs at JMU, and I'm excited to help close out the day here and help folks prepare for the transition to JMU with just a little bit of additional information here. So in terms of the information that we'll be discussing for the conversation, so the goal for the time that we have here is we're going to talk through a couple of items. I know that there has been extensive conversation today about the resources that are available. And so I wanted to talk through just a couple of final sort of notes about the resources that we have here at JMU and a couple of things to help sort of contextualize that time. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is what I think of as what is sort of the future of education in our country, and is a real revolution happening in both the psychology and education spaces, which is the concept of growth mindset. So growth mindset is centered around the idea of neuroplasticity, which is sort of the scientific term in the psychological world for this idea. And this was really developed out of Carol Dweck's lab at Stanford and has really grown through some really promising experiments at a couple of different spaces around the country in terms of educational ideas. So the idea behind neuroplasticity is it's the belief that human capacities are not fixed, but can be developed over time. So it's the idea, and this has been the reason sort of for the term neuroplasticity, is this has been vetted at a neural level. So this is something that people have actually measured in terms of folks who are trained on the concept of growth mindset or neuroplasticity, and then there are before and after brain scans that have been looked at in terms of capacity. So the most common way that this is typically described is that the brain is a muscle just like any other muscle, and the brain and the different capacities of the brain can be exercised in different ways. And so people are not inherently good or bad at things, but they have skills that are developed or underdeveloped to varying degrees. And in thinking about growth mindset, that contextualizes things and contextualizes setbacks as part of a growth process and not indicative of someone's innate, fixed, low ability. So when a student comes to campus and struggles on their first test and they wanted to be a speech therapist for many years, and they come into their first sort of core class after they transferred to JMU and they do poorly on the first test, that is an opportunity to grow into the person that they aspire to be, and not a fundamental referendum on their capacity. And that's a really critical step. You have probably the phrases resilience and grit have been very popular in terms of the educational space recently. And growth mindset, I would say, is a close, more scientific, more resourced concept for those ideas. And JMU is a place that has the resources to help make that possible. So just to give you a sense of where we are in growth mindset studies and some places where we've seen this tested. So David Yeager, who's at the University of Texas, Austin, is sort of the main, what I would say, vetter or a validator of the concept of growth mindset, and has done several really interesting tests of this concept and really interesting applications, but one of which has been cited a lot. This was published in Science, which is one of the most prestigious journals out there. Was a 1-hour growth mindset online module and delivered to rising 9th or 10th graders. I can't remember off the top of my head now. But as you can tell, this 1 hour thing, which was done at a very, very wide scale, there were over 10,000 students that were tested this way, was one of the most substantial proportion of effects on the grades of any cost of duration in the literature. That's like scientific speak for this was as impactful as anything that they had measured before. And this was less than an hour. And you can compare this to other much sort of more extensive, more invasive kinds of interventions to help folks grow academically. From a mental health standpoint, similar kind of test. But what they saw is for folks who had already been, and this was for folks who were already diagnosed with already had a mental health related diagnosis, that growth mindset training, and this I believe was 10 months later, there was a pre-post, and it was the folks who had been trained in growth mindset, this was linked with a faster stress recovery. In terms of response to failure, this study from 2008 found that there was a strong relationship between growth mindset training and folks' willingness to take on additional learning after failure. So I say all this, you can feel sort of compelled by this or not. But some ways that you can help as your students are going through this transition process to think about growth mindset is, as you hear students, because this is a very common thing and a huge part of how folks are socialized, to think about themselves as bad at math or good at math or bad at social studies or good at social studies. And that those ideas are not fixed in amber, but they're actually things that they can be working on a daily basis. So when that test comes, and whatever that test may be, that struggle, that academic, whatever that academic adjustment challenge is going to come, it's not a black or white situation. It is an opportunity to grow into things. So in terms of how you're communicating with your students related to growth mindset, you can provide praise for things that can be improved upon. So as opposed to, as an example, I have a 7-year-old who has an anxiety disorder, and that manifests as an extreme form of perfectionism. It's fairly confusing to me because I don't personally have that kind of anxiety, but for him, if he can't do it perfectly, he doesn't want to do it. And so the challenge for us is that he does present as someone who people think of as very quote unquote smart. And so that's a thing that he gets affirmed on a lot. The challenge with that is that when he faces challenges, he struggles to go after them because everything should feel easy to him. He's been affirmed in that, and that feels like you are either this or not. So we work, and we can only control things to a certain degree. We work to train him on his effort, his patience, his vulnerability. We work on, as he's working through a problem, we, can recognize, there was a lot of effort that went into, completing your homework. We're really proud of you. Or we understand that took a lot of patience. Thank you for sticking with that. Or when he shares with us about something that's really challenging, thank you for sharing that. We know that that's hard. We appreciate that. So it's not, it's not a sort of black or white thing, but it's all things that he can actively be working on. And this is sort of what I'll share as we make this transition to the next piece here, is that it has to be tied to strategy. So thanking someone for their effort can feel pretty heartless if it's not actually tied to, okay, well, you worked hard on that. It wasn't quite good enough in this circumstance, but that can be a dead end for folks. And so it has to be tied to resources. It has to be tied to strategies for folks and how they can be improving and growing. And so that transitions to a really key piece. And I know that, y'all have heard about resources over the course of the day, but I just wanted to kind of summarize here in terms of the resources that are available. I've worked at other schools, and I happen to know that JMU has amazing resources. I hope that over the course of the day, there's been a couple of times where you've paused and said, oh gosh, wow, that's great. But the challenge that we have is that if students don't know where to access resources, if families don't know how to help students access those resources, then they could be operating in a vacuum. We have a whole building on campus called the Student Success Center that is devoted to your students being successful. That is a campus-wide commitment that we have. People are absolutely devoted on this campus to your students being successful. But many of those spaces, and a couple of which that I work with on a daily basis, We want more students seeking out the services of the Career Center. We want more people engaging in the local community and engaging in volunteer work. But frankly, students are not finding those spaces at the kind of level that we think would be really beneficial. So transitioning to this slide and this chart, which I put together, and then Casey was kind enough to actually format correctly for me. But on the left side of the column here, you'll see in purple, you will see a possible need that your student may have while they're on campus. And on the white column here, you'll see the resource that is available. If you'd like to screenshot this and have this to refer to later on as as your students are coming to you with questions, these are quick answers for how you can find folks. And you'll see one of these is the Dean of Students office, which is, simply put, don't know where to go. If the rest of the columns don't work, feel free to contact the Dean of Students office. They want to be a support. I happen to work in the same suite as the Dean of Students office, and they are experts at getting folks where they need to go to find support. And if there's not a clear answer, then they're experts at getting on the phone with you, talking through what that may be, getting your student into their office and talking through what those issues might be. So we've got amazing resources. They can be a really critical part of how you can help your students grow into the experience that they're having here on campus. And we are really grateful for the work that you'll put in. We want your students to be successful. We know that you do too. We're excited about what that partnership will look like. And we are here to be of support in any way that we can. So with that, I will hand it over to Casey to talk through what is next for the rest of the transition experience.
Yep, great. Thank you, Miles, for that. So a few little tidbits that I want to leave you with as you close out your virtual summer springboard day is that our TOPAs, the ones that hosted the Q&A just moments ago, they have also been meeting with your students today. And so they are a valuable resource to your students during this transition. We do have their information up on our orientation webpage if that's of interest to you to check out our entire TOPA team. But your students will receive an email from them, and that is a great, as they go through the next coming weeks, if they have any additional questions, they can definitely reach out to their TOPA and continue building those connections that they started to build today. Did want to talk a little bit about move-in weekend. And so for transfer students who are living on campus, move-in is Sunday, August 21st during the morning. And so if your student's not living on campus, they have chosen to live off campus somewhere, as long as they have moved to Harrisonburg, moved into their off-campus housing by Sunday, I'd say around noon, they should be set up so that they can then participate in the many different events that we've put together in the program called Weeks of Welcome. And so we are concluding the second phase of orientation with Summer Springboard. And so that third phase is Weeks of Welcome that does kick off on Sunday, August 21st. And so we'll have various different events on campus, some that are specific for transfer students to connect with other transfer students, and some that is just open to all students that are joining the JMU community. And so there are both academic programs put together as well as a variety of different social events to help them get connected to the campus community. And so we'll have programs starting on Sunday. They'll last through Monday and Tuesday. Classes do begin on that Wednesday, August 24th, and then Weeks of Welcome will continue through September 11th. So it's about 2 to 2.5 weeks of programs that are geared toward introducing students to campus, to resources, and to the community so that they can start building their peer network here on campus. There are some one-book steps that are continuing to become available in the next coming weeks. And so your student has done a really great job in working through those one-book steps up until this point. And so if you can help us encourage your students to get back in that one-book process and make sure they're continuing to check those steps off so they are setting themselves up for success come August. Another thing that I like to remind families to remind their students is checking their JMU Dukes email. And so this is the formal way that JMU will communicate with your student. And we send lots of information to the email. And so your student should be checking it and reading those emails so that they don't miss anything important that we have to share. One thing that we do here in Student Affairs is on Mondays during the academic year, we send an email called Dukes Weekly. And so this email goes out Mondays at 1, and it is a preview of what's to come during the week. So it could be different events that are happening that week, could be different jobs that have become available. So there are a variety of different things that will be highlighted in those emails. And so that's a really great way, if your student calls home or just feels disconnected from campus, have them check out that Dukes Weekly email for different things that are happening that week. So for the remainder of today, there's a portion, the next portion is called Campus Connections. And so knowing that you aren't here on campus, we did want to offer the opportunity for you to reach out to different departments on campus who you may not have heard from, but still have questions from. And so it will link to a website that has many different departments, their contact information, their phone number or email address, and also to their website. So be sure as you then close out the day to reach out to the campus departments and finish getting some of those important questions answered. And then the last thing is our program assessment. And so we've put together a variety of different sessions for you today. We would love to get your feedback on how this experience has been for you. And we will continue to review that information to make this experience meaningful and productive and informative for future new Dukes and their families coming to JMU. At the conclusion of that program assessment, there is a bookstore coupon that you can use online. So I hope you'll take advantage of filling out that assessment so that we can get the feedback, but then you can also save some money in your pocket. So with that, just a final welcome to JMU, and we can't wait to see all of you in August. Thank you all so much and have a great day.